Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Peter Nygård? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I will look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the alleged crimes, then offer my analysis. Peter Nygård was born in Helsinki, Finland on July 24, 1941. His family lived on a farm for many years. It was in an area that was extremely cold. Peter claimed that he had to use skis to get to school. This reminds me of a Bill Cosby routine when he said he had to walk uphill in the snow to school both ways. As it turns out, Peter Nygård and Bill Cosby have more than that in common. The area where Peter lived was hard hit economically by World War II. His family moved from the farm to a more urban environment, and his parents operated a bakery. When he was 11 years old, Peter's family moved to Manitoba, Canada. Initially, the conditions there didn't seem much better than Finland. The family lived in a converted coal shed that was about 80 square feet. They did not have electricity or running water. The family used an outhouse that was 600 feet away from the shed. This made using the facility difficult, especially in an area where the temperature could reach 40 below zero. Eventually, the family moved to Winnipeg. Peter's father worked at a bank. Then his parents operated a bakery, just as they had done in Finland. Peter graduated from high school and briefly went to college in Minnesota. He transferred to the University of North Dakota and graduated with a business degree in 1964. He said that college prepared him for the business world, and he learned to study, focus, and be committed. He found a job with a department store chain in Canada called Eaton's, but he did not like having an entry-level position. He claimed that he was administered an aptitude test which indicated he was quite well suited to be president of the company, but instead he had to sweep floors, run errands, stock shelves, and carry bags of manure. Peter worked his way up at Eaton's. He became an executive in charge of $250 million a year in sales. Peter became bored by this. He wanted a greater challenge. In 1967, he quit his job and started working for a fashion designer. He eventually borrowed $8,000 and bought 20% of the business. By 1970, he owned the entire company. It would eventually be known as Nygård International. Peter marketed clothing to women 35 and older and sold items in discount retail stores. At its peak, the company had 170 stores in North America, 15,000 employees, and over $1 billion in revenue each year. Peter built a $30 million mansion in the Bahamas. He bought the property in 1987 after winning a bidding war against Sean Connery. I guess Peter was one villain who James Bond could not defeat. Peter was romantically involved with a number of women throughout his life. He was married to a model in 1968. They separated less than 2 years later. Peter dated a flight attendant. They had 2 children together. In 1974, he had a child with another woman. He dated another flight attendant in 1986. They had a child together. Peter once dated Anna Nicole Smith and even claimed that he tried to help her discontinue her substance use. Altogether, Peter had 10 children with 8 different women. Before moving to the timeline of the alleged crimes, let's hear a word from today's sponsor, Factor. In a wellness market full of unrealistic diet plans, Factor is a welcomed and new approach to prepared food. Factor meals include premium ingredients with integrity. With Factor, there is no preparation and no mess. Factor cuts out stressful meal planning and extensive preparation, so meals come together in minutes, taking the guesswork out of what to make for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Factor is even faster than ordering takeout. Meal plans range from 4 to 18 meals per week, and you can add more or reduce the number depending on your specific needs. Plus, you can easily skip a week if necessary. One of the reasons I like Factor is because it's perfect for a busy lifestyle. There are no worries about going to the grocery store or cooking, which gives me more time to make videos. Head to go.factor75.com/drgrande120 and use code drgrande120 to get $120 off. That's $120 off at go.factor75.com patreon.com/drgrande120, code drgrande120. Now moving to the timeline of the alleged crimes. Peter was involved in several civil and criminal matters throughout his career. In 1968, he was arrested and charged with an offense of a sexual nature. The charges were dropped. The same thing happened in 1980. In the 1990s, Peter settled 3 harassment complaints from former employees. In 2003, a couple filed a lawsuit against him saying that he deceived them into taking jobs as managers of his mansion in the Bahamas. The case settled 4 years later. In 2005, a newspaper in Finland published an article about Peter throwing sex parties. Peter sued them, but lost. In 2006, Canada forced Peter to pay taxes on $2 million in revenue, which they said he didn't report. In 2007, Peter and another wealthy individual named Louis Bacon started a protracted legal battle after Louis complained about noise coming from Peter's mansion in the Bahamas. Louis owned a mansion next to Peter's. In 2012, Peter sued the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation over a documentary that was released in 2010. He also accused 3 journalists of conspiring to discredit him. Peter was investigated by federal authorities in the United States from 2015 to 2017. In 2018, his mansion in the Bahamas was seized by the Supreme Court of the Bahamas. In 2019, a judge in the Bahamas said that Peter violated a court order. He was sentenced to 90 days in jail, but he never returned to the Bahamas. In 2020, a class action lawsuit was filed against Peter for assault of a sexual nature, intimidation, bribery, and other offenses. In October of 2021, he was arrested in Toronto, Canada, and charged with offenses of a sexual nature. At the time making this video, Peter is still facing charges in Canada and could face charges in the United States in the future. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1, Peter Nygård had an incredible career as far as his business ventures. It remains to be seen if he adds an equally notable criminal career to his resume. Peter started with nothing, worked his way up to an executive position in a company, left that company, and eventually ended up buying his own company. Despite achieving incredible financial success, Peter was never accepted as a mainstream celebrity. It appears as though he was frustrated that he wasn't as popular as some other business people. He believed that financial success was the only requirement for being truly famous. Which brings me to item number 2. Peter took a number of actions to make himself appear more attractive, or at least what he thought people would find attractive. A few examples. A photographer said that on one occasion, Peter asked him to take his picture walking into a restaurant to make it seem as though he was interesting enough to attract that type of attention. In company marketing materials, Peter plastered his image all over the place as if he was desperately trying to become a household name. The primary demographic for his clothing is women 35 and over, yet Peter was often seen with women younger than 35 who were wearing bikinis. Peter had a number of celebrity visitors to his mansion in the Bahamas, including Michael Jackson, George H.W. Bush, Robert De Niro, Lee Iacocca, Jessica Alba, and Sylvester Stallone. Peter was all about his image. He wanted people to know that he was wealthy, which was true, but he also wanted people to believe that he was in demand romantically, a major player in the modeling industry, and a real celebrity. Item number 3, Peter's narcissism, bizarre nature, tackiness, and grandiosity are reflected in his mansion in the Bahamas. His 10-bedroom mansion was 150,000 square feet and sat on 4.2 acres. It had water slides, numerous pools and spas, and a racetrack. There was a 32,000 square foot grand hall, an 80-foot tall mountain made to look like the Matterhorn at Disneyland, fake volcanoes, machines that would grind rocks to produce sand. I'm not sure why he needed that considering the property was already on sand. The ceiling of one room was covered with a 100,000-pound piece of glass. I guess this is for when the sword of Damocles is not frightening enough. The mansion featured an underground cave that held 30 of Peter's vehicles. Peter designed this monstrosity of a mansion personally. This is something that he actually took credit for, which illustrates his lack of insight, like he thought the mansion was something to be proud of. He believed that other people looked at it and said, "This is amazing," when really they were saying, "How could anybody have such a terrible sense of aesthetics?" Peter believed that he was leaving something behind for the Bahamas and perhaps even for the world. In a sense, he was correct, but not as he intended. At the time making this video, the property has been abandoned and is in disrepair. Item number 4, Peter wanted to live forever. After his mother died, he said that he decided not to die, which I guess one could consider an important life decision. When he was 70, he told people that he had the body of a 25-year-old. It's not clear to what body he was referring. Maybe he kidnapped somebody. Peter engaged in a number of behaviors in an effort to achieve immortality. He exercised obsessively, had injected himself with human growth hormone, traveled to China to get stem cell treatments. He looked into a technology called somatic cell nuclear transfer. This is a technique for cloning, which in theory could be used to create spare parts for human beings and to allow for other types of medical treatment. Peter approached several scientists and tried to get them to conduct research for him, but it was clear he really had no idea what he was talking about. This did not stop him from pursuing research in this area. Which brings me to item number 5. Peter used his political influence in the Bahamas to push legislation favorable to stem cell research. The Progressive Liberal Party in the Bahamas came back into power in 2002 after receiving millions of dollars in mysterious campaign contributions. There is no limit to political contributions in the Bahamas. After being victorious in the election, a number of officials met with Peter at his mansion. Peter said it was the greatest victory we ever had. Now moving to the final item, number 6. Peter allegedly offended against dozens of women. Here are some of the allegations that have been made by various women. He confined them on his property. He harassed them. He made inappropriate remarks. He made unwelcome advances, which intensified after he was rejected. And he used force during some of his offenses. What do I think happened in the case of Peter Nygård? This is just a theory, my opinion. Peter appears to be narcissistic. He has a grandiose and distorted image of himself, a sense of entitlement, fantasies of unlimited power or success. He believes himself to be special, and he does not have empathy for other people. Everything was always about Peter. He was highly vindictive and filed lawsuits against people simply to harass them. When a victim fought back, he tried to pay them off. This tactic worked several times. Peter is proof that when an extremely wealthy person is corrupt, they can get away with just about anything. Very few people are brave enough to stand up to the type of financial and reputational damage that Peter could inflict. Peter met his match when he ran into Louis Bacon. The numerous lawsuits over the course of years exposed Peter as petty and vindictive. As far as Peter's romantic activities, I think that he viewed himself as romantically desirable and believed that he deserved to have whoever he wanted. He used his money and image to attract potential victims. For example, he would throw parties at his mansion and invite women under the guise that he was going to help them become a model. This gave him access to dozens of women. Peter wanted to live forever, not to simply continue existing, but to continue having sex. He wanted to remain vital and strong, not just alive. Peter is an example of what happens when narcissistic desire is fueled by millions of dollars. When narcissism is given incredible means, it causes incredible destruction. Those are my thoughts in the case of Peter Nygård. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.